Assalamualaikum, I'm Anna Ekalipa from Group 11. My reports about Islam democratization and pluralism. Islam democratization and pluralism. 4 decades ago, writers within the mainstream Islamic political thought treat democracy and pluralism as the alien to Islam. This was the typical position of writers officialate, which said who rejected the secular foundation of not only of democracy, but also of capitalism and communism. However, by the mid-1980s, this trend started to lose its momentum with the rest of the new paradigm that treat democracy not as an ideology or philosophy to be emulated by Muslims, but as a tool for electing, checking, and rotating political power and for protecting civil liberties and the basic rights of scientists. Ghanouchi had been in the forefront of this new trend that advocates democracy and pluralism. He rejected the Western nation that secularism is essential for democracy is centered on the compatibility of the same of the principle of democracy with Islam. In their entirety, those factors influenced the Islamics and the Tunisia Manifesto of the Islamic Trend Movement (ITM), authored and unknown by the Ghanouchi in June 1981, expressed the movement's commitment the participatory process included democracy and pluralism, and sharing in this process is style no exclusion of any political, not even the communists, and the affirmed that the base of the legitimacy solely the ballot box. Some elements, including Iranians, denounce Tunisian counterparts, accusing them of being too concessionary to Western thoughts. The establishment of the ITM in 1981 was a watershed in the political career of the Ghanouchi and the history of his Islamic movement. From the point in time on the unique vocally pledged his full commitment to the democracy as a system of government and as a method of the change, despite the criticism leveled against him and his movement by other Islamists, especially those of the Mashriq. Ghanouchi remained firm in his conviction about the democracy and pluralism. In Al-Hurriya Al-Amma fi al-Dawla al-Islamiyya, Ghanouchi analyzed a number of the basic participles of his political scheme of a contemporary Islamic state. Foremost among these are the concept of the freedom, citizenship rights, political rights, and liberties. The decrease of Western democracy, foundation of Islamic democracy, and the principles. Islamic concept of the freedom. Ghanouchi conceptualized Islamic freedom as the subjugation of man to Allah. She viewing this as the only way to liberty, like Hassan al-Turabi, Malik bin Nabi, and Muhammad Iqbal, Ghanouchi perceived freedom as a legal concession rather than a natural right. Islamic freedom is embedded in the Quran, and this sense freedom is struggle, jihad. It means jihad to fortify the soul by way of servitude to Allah. The more man that becomes faithful in servitude to Allah, the freer it becomes, and the higher in the sense and the skills of the human excellent. It becomes clear from this analysis that the Western view that conceptualizes freedom exclusively in terms of the independence of the individual from interference by others. It is at larger head with the Ghanouchi characterization from freedom. The Islamic concept of the state. The question of whether there is an Islamic concept to the state has been a source of the controversy among contemporary Islamic writers. A few, like Ali Abdel Razik, question the extent of such a concept. Ghanouchi argued that an Islamic concept of state does exist. To him, like other Islamic rebellions, Islam, it is a complete and comprehensive way of life, and based on that, the establishment of an Islamic state constitutes an integral part of the Islam as he understands it. Without the state, an Islamic way of life cannot be fully realized. If this state is not established, religion is inevitably undermined. The state derives in authority, laws, and regulation from the Sharia, i.e. the Islamic states inspired by divine revelation, and its Shura-based. Such a state was first established in the Medina. It lets 14th centuries to collapse when the Muslims compromises their religion. The Sahifa stipulated the rights and the obligations of the citizens of the state. Freedom and responsibility. Ghanouchi argued that the fundamental element in Islam that man is the free, and constricting his freedom in an exception. And elucidating the principle, Ghanouchi emphasized the primacy of the freedom of it, because that is the basis of all other freedom and the rights in Islam. However, Ghanouchi argued that this God-given freedom should not be abused by the man. It shall be utilized in a balanced manner and without excesses. Justice. The Justice Ghanouchi argued that an Islamic state is supposed to suppress all forms of justice. It is the responsibility of the citizens of the Shura best states to deter injustice and support those who have been wrong, and consider the act of the justice as an aggression against Allah Himself. Legitimacy. Here, Ghanouchi argued that the legitimacy of the Islamic states can be derived from two primary sources: the religious text or al-nas, or revelation as presented in the Quran and Sunnah. In the second source of legitimacy, in the Surah to Ghanouchi, the authority of the Sharia surpassed in any other authorities in the Islamic states. It is supremacy as the source of the legitimacy is a unique questionable. Conclusion. The conclusion contrary to the assertion of the critics, Ghanouchi considered revelation to be the ultimate frame of the reference for his ideas. As a thinker and an activist, it seems that his primary concern has been to find solution to the sufferings of his country. To notion other Muslim states which have been afflicted by despotic and totalitarian system of the government. He argued that democracy is the solution for the problem of despotism. However, he treated democracy not as an ideology that could be imported and occupied by Muslim society, but as a tool or set of mechanisms for electing, checking, and dismissing the government of the day, and for protecting the civil liberties and the basic rights of citizens. Ghanouchi used his theory of Farag to rebut the Islamic rejection of the democracy. He rejected the widely accepted assumption by Western writers that both secularism and modernism are essential prerequisites of democracy. Yun lamang po at maraming salamat.